Thank you to all of our members for supporting this channel, especially the Lords and Commanders. If you're interested in extra battle reports and helping to support this channel, hit the link in the description box below. Go check out our channel partners, Baron of Dice and Grey Matter Games. They have some amazing products. There will be promo codes and links in the description box below.
So with that, we're going to go into the second part of this stream, which is to go over Mason and your performance in Sparkle Party Deathmatch 10. You went there and you got Best General.
Yep.
Went 5-0, bringing in Feck, and it's a different kind of Feck list than people have kind of thought. So I was wondering if you could kind of go over your list and just tell us kind of what you were thinking building it out, and what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so a small disclaimer is that this list actually probably, I know nobody owns list, right? But I definitely got this list from Jeremy Vessier. He's a really, really strong competitive player. I think he even made a YouTube video where he talks about this, and I'm in a few Discords with him, so he and I kind of went back and forth, but he took a list similar to this to an RTT. We chatted about it, modified it a little bit. He said, I'm rocking this now, switch to this, and I was like, yes, I'm going to run with that. Not necessarily my original idea, but it is really awesome.
But also a good shout out, because his channel is like Bark Doer. And he just goes in depth. Like he's like business analytics is his job, and he just applies that to Sigmar, and like he started thinking about the game in a completely different way. It's pretty awesome content.
It is really good. He used to be in Portland, like local, right?
Yeah.
So we used to get to see him a little more often. But yeah, so my list, I was definitely going for a hero heavy, surf heavy, like slog kind of a build. You know, leading up to this, I played a lot of Nurgle, and I had recently been playing like the Monster Mash with Glotkin and Triple Magath Lord and some slugs, and really just kind of slow creeping and playing a similar game, but with big monsters and making my opponent come into me. So the feel was already there. I kind of liked that position. You know, I evaluate lists sometimes like, why damage? I don't fight anything, you know, like, and so sometimes I like to play a list like that, and Feck is doing that really well right now. You know, if you play a style kind of like this list I took, you've got tons of revive, you've got tons of high ward saves. You know, one thing that my list was really trying to spread a 5-up ward, so I felt even more like Nurgle. You know, I was giving it to every hero. My big block of Crypt Guard have it, and then I've got a prayer to give one of the other big blocks. So I'm spreading a 5-up ward really wide. Really making it so that your math that you've calculated for damage is not quite adding up. And if I just barely stick around, it's really easy for me to get back to full. And if you do wipe me out, I'm on the other side of the board coming in. So, so there's a lot of value to this style. Now, again, like I kind of said, like I don't have a huge hammer like the 9 horrors that you kind of been seeing, or, you know, big grips of these knight units. But 30 Crypt Guard is definitely a hammer in its own right. It is a huge amount of output and a big block at the same time. And so oftentimes I was making kind of have this grip of like 15 fighting and then tail it down back to my heroes that are all conga lined. So, you know, I've got a good amount of profile going into you with buffs, and then I'm spreading myself back. So I'm sitting on an objective, and I'm next to all my heroes for maximum and really playing the game that way, and then getting to decide, okay, do I need to keep these guys, you hit me first, do I need to keep that many in combat to wipe the unit, or do I pull myself out of combat? You know, you get a lot of fun play when you big blocks like this. Can be a little annoying to play, but a lot of micro decisions. So it's
go ahead, David.
I would like for you to kind of explain how some of the recursion happens. Chalice of Usharon is a very interesting endless spell, and then just a very basic description of how you get recursion back into this list.
Yeah, so Chalice of Usharon quickly is the endless spell, and it is like the lifeblood of reviving serfs. It's so very good. It casts like within 24 inches. It's got like an absurd range, and then it moves. And what it does is it checks for models that die within 12 inches, friendly and foe. So if you've got a horde and I've got a horde, we could stack that thing up to like 40 dice. It's not terribly uncommon to be rolling
Right.
20 plus with it. Okay. So what happens is at the end of the battle shock phase, whatever that number got to with the total amount of model deaths within that 12-inch bubble, I get to roll that many dice, and for a 4-up, I can revive a surf unit or heal something within 12 inches. You can revive wholly within 12 and heal, but you're here healing your heroes and reviving these surf units.
And
So
you can do both at the same time.
yeah, and I can pick and choose. So let's say I rolled 24 dice and I got 14 4-ups. I could heal the Gore Warden for 2 damage and the Abhorrent for 3 and then revive 7
Wow.
serfs. Yeah. So like
On top of
really,
a 5-up ward.
yes.
That's insane.
It's the spice, dude.
Yeah.
And it's a 50-point endless spell. It is amazing. How was your luck with getting this endless spell out and keeping it on the battlefield in a meta that's all about magic? I noticed that you didn't have an Andorian Acolytes battalion. You went with double battle reg.
Yep.
So did you struggle with getting that endless spell out at all, or were they too busy trying to unbind all of your other spells that buff your army and help them move faster?
Yeah, I mean, so this army, especially with 6 heroes, and I've got a fair bit of spell casting, right? Like I do threaten really good spells, right? So I try to sequence in such a way that I make my opponent fear spell A, let's say, and then in turn 2, I actually really want to prioritize spell B or the endless spell, and so I'll lead with A because I made them fear that more in the fourth. Right, so there is kind of a lot of like mind baiting when you have this many important spells. However, I have kind of built it and approached it where none of it's super necessary. So yeah, not having Antorian Acolytes was challenging. I did play against 2 Skaven and Seraphon, so like it definitely was not sticking around most of the time. However, I really only need it once. So if I'm in an opportune time where you know I get to go now and I'm gonna engage and potentially threaten a double turn, because I'll talk about that briefly, but you don't want to get doubled. But if I'm potentially gonna take one, having that chalice there for that one combat to make sure that I'm gonna go in and clear something with these Crypt Guard and make sure they're as close back to 30 as possible at the end of this turn. I just need that once really, and I've bought and it's bought its weight. You know what I mean? And sometimes just threatening it so that I can actually get the deep strike move is better, right? Okay, I need them to waste their primals here, so I'm gonna throw Chalice. Oh dang, you unbound it. Okay, now I'm gonna get the abhorrent spell, right? Or now I'm gonna get horror stuff or whatever it is. So yeah, I played pretty caster heavy stuff, so it wasn't super impactful. However, every single time it touches the table, it's incredible. So one instance of it can win you a game, right?
Yeah.
The other healing that is in here is both abhorrents both abhorrent arc regents say that at the beginning of my hero phase, I can pick a surf unit or a knight unit 18 inches, so just like ludicrously far and just within, and I can revive 1 knight or 3 serfs. So every start of hero phase, I'm putting 6 royal beast flayers back into the unit. And they've got the multi-wound guys, so it could just be like 2 leaders and 4 dogs, boom, and just that. I just like crazy revived health on that unit, right? Or I've got these Morbeg Knights, and you got 1 down to 1 wound, and he barely lived. Okay, now it's for free, no points, no nothing, just because I exist. So that revive is super good and super reliable. And honestly, like don't tell anybody, but this actually is probably better than the courtier revives, which is like the third way to do it, which is your courtiers generate noble deeds, and they can spend them in 1 or 2 increments to bring back a serf or 2 for a knight. There's a way you can like duplicate that with an artifact that I'm not using here, but
that was the big
the
surprise.
Super Marrow Herald,
yeah.
One other thing I'm looking at with this list that is like low-key spicy is putting Curse on that little Cardinal, who does not really seem like the scariest hero on the board, but if you can curse a unit and then hit it with 30 with a double reinforced unit of Crypt Guard or even those beast players, I feel like with all of those attacks, you're getting a fair amount of mortal wound output to add along to the damage output.
Oh yeah, yep. It's really, really powerful. I think actually in hindsight, I probably would have swapped those. I think I would have preferred that on the Marrow Scroll Herald when the dust settled, because he is actually creeping up a little bit further up the board with the boys,
right?
And the Cardinal is hanging back a little bit more with the other unit beast flayers, oftentimes I was kind of making like a two-prong approach like that. So I think I actually would swap those, because the no visibility means on the Marrow Scroll Herald, right, means that he can be closer to engagement and still get that off. You know what else is kind of fun is, and I think I was playing this right. We asked the judge, I think, but you can just roll smite, which is like a 2-up. So oftentimes I was like, well, I can't. There's no curse or anything, but I'll just smite on a 2-up here to get my noble, because I just can.
Yeah.
Because
You're absolutely right, because that's a universal. So
Right.
you can do that, or you can hand out a ward with bless. So
exactly.
that's, and like if you have like a cheap little priest that's a thorn in your side, like if you're playing Corn or something, it's kind of fun to just be like, take a mortal wound, and you have no way to heal it in your
or
army.
D3,
you know what I
right?
mean?
I think if you spike the 6, then it's more wounds. But yeah, I also was going for 2-drop here because and what worked out for me is I did get to be attacker or have choice at the start of every game over the tournament. So that was what I was going for, because I do not want to be made to go first. And
Right.
the thought process there is that, you know, you see like Stonehorns or Old Doc or stuff like that, like, oh, I want to give away first so that I can double. You know, oftentimes I did not want to have a double turn either. I need to make sure that you are not going to have a turn. Because as long as we keep it you go, I go, Feck Revive is very valuable. In the opportunity that you're allowed to have 2 turns before I do, you can actually do enough damage and break through that you can threaten my revive mechanics enough that I might not be able to get it off.
Yeah, and that's all the hero revives, right? The Chalice can still do it, but it can be unbound, right?
Yeah, and normally it is. Yeah, it's like an auto spike, because you get your primals first, and you're like, any dickhead's just going to roll to get rid of that, because there's no penalty to keep throwing primals. So
right, and abhorrents have royal blood, so they're all just healing E3 on top of all of the other healing that you have. It's very, very hard to punch through an attrition army. All of the death armies are very good at this. If it's you go, I go all the way through, like against Soulblight Gravelords or Osiarch Bone Reapers, you're going to have one hell of a time getting any units off the board. And then, like with Osiarch Bone Reapers and New Feck, I mean, even if you double this army, it can just come back a lot faster than you think, and then it catches you out on board edges. And it's, I mean, from the half dozen games I've played on the channel and just playing around with what I have in my collection with Flesh Eater Courts, there's so many different ways to play, and it's curiously strong. Like I took a list that I didn't think really had legs, and it was like good. Their abilities are just amazing, man.
And I really like to play armies in this place that Flesh Eater Courts lives in right now, but it's this like this element of unknown, I guess. And so you're going to play a lot more opponents that are not aware of what you're trying to do, and that becomes terribly challenging for them, because if they don't know what to counter, and they're like, okay, yeah, I've heard about the Flesh Eater Courts, and you make deeds and you revive stuff. Okay, I got you. Let me know what's going on. That person is going to have a bad time in this game, right? Your opponent
just go to heroes.
Exactly. Exactly. You need to know exactly
That's what
how
everybody
to
keeps saying.
slice and capitalize.
That was my follow-up question to that. Is how do you beat this list typically, and what are the things you're scared of in the meta once people know what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, again, as silly as it does sound, and it's definitely not simple, but of course, killing the heroes is going to be big. Once they fall, my defenses fall. You know, they're handing out my buffs, they're reviving, they're literally my entire allegiance ability. You know, I need the heroes to generate the deeds. They need to cast spells and do damage to do that. And when my guys die, I need to have the deeds to bring them back. So getting rid of the heroes is super valuable. With a list like mine, it becomes terribly challenging, because I really only need to have 2 of my blocks kind of strung out, and I've got this little moving castle, and I can have a literal bodyguard unit around me that you would like never penetrate. If I really need to protect from a melee, you know, I can just group all 6 of my heroes together, stand them on an objective, put 20 beast flayers around them, put the other stuff in front. You'll never get to them, you know? So there is that possibility. I will say my 5th game was against Croak and the gang, you know, Croak and the Frogs. And
I was so excited to ask you if you had played against Seraphon, because looking at this list, these little 6-wounded heroes, that's what freaks me out the most, is playing into AoE damage and magic.
Yeah. So I did play against that, and it is a tough matchup. I think that for a lot of armies right now, that Croak and the gang is a tough matchup. It's very powerful. It does what it does really, really well. And unless you're somehow like another Magic Dom type army, like it's gonna get away with its stuff. And it didn't dawn on me until like a few days ago, no joke. But I was going for all of my spells, and he's just like, I'm just gonna unbind these, and I just like was forgetting that he generates those stupid points from, but like
Yeah.
I need to be
At least
casting my
not as
spells.
many now, though, right?
Yeah, right. I know. So, um, but yeah, that army is a tough matchup. If they double you, it's devastating.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you really want to be dictating and not being allowed to get doubled. However, it's one of those where that you give away first, and then you have to kind of full send into them. So you've got these bricks, and you just need to march them across the board. Just run,
Yeah.
get them engaged, right? Because if you get the double, then you can likely actually wipe that army. Even with my list here, it's relatively fragile, and you just need to get there. So setting yourself up to do that double and just kind of full send into them, that's kind of the game plan. And then you keep your stuff safe back, and you're going to do one of those conga strings to keep your hero in such a way. And jumping ahead, because this was game 5, but ultimately what I had to do, because we were on the siphon, the meld water one, right? We lose the objectives after 2 turns. So it's kind of a cat and mouse kind of thing, but I did full send, and I just kept the heroes really far back and off of objectives so that I wasn't scoring the ones until I wanted to, and kind of strategically pushing blocks to take it back from him, because I controlled more of the board than Seraphon did. So I was really trying to make this you go, I go, and I pull my models when I took damage off of the objective and then revive them back on, so that I could keep this kind of cat and mouse happening on one portion of the map while I owned the rest, and force him to move and teleport out of the castle. So I kind of don't care about their solitaire game plan. Instead, I need to present you with an opportunity that you have to adjust, because now your
Yeah.
norms are thrown off, and now what do you do? Because now you've teleported Croak out of the buff range and away from the guard. So now he's threatened, but you did that because I gave you access to one of my heroes. So I actually started to like throw stuff away and make it juicy targets, so that the rest of the army could keep doing its thing. Because once we're past like turn 3,
Right.
all right, kill the heroes. I have a different game plan now. I weathered the storm, and now I need to go do this. You also pray that they have a bad magic phase, because that's awesome if that happens.
That's the main game plan against the frogs.
Yeah.
I want to
oh, go ahead.
I want to address a question in the chat. Somebody was asking, are you seeing single drop armies in the meta right now? And I feel like 2 that you went with is a very safe option, and here's the reason. Lots of people are taking the Andorian Acolytes battalion so they can get those extra primal dice so their magic is reliable. That means you're seeing a lot of 3-drop armies. A lot of 3-drop armies, because you've got Battle Reg and Andorian Acolytes. So what Mason has done here is he's taken a 2-drop, and that was enough, Mason, for you to have choice in every single game, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Is if you're 2, you're gold. If you're 1, sometimes you're missing out on some of the synergies you can give your army by taking just a single drop. Some armies can do it if they're hyper elite, but yeah, I think 2 is a really good spot right now if you're not going to take Andorian Acolytes.
Yeah.
You're also
These are
seeing
made
that.
up numbers, but 1 is probably like 95% chance of choice. 2 is probably like a 85 to 90% chance of choice.
It feels pretty
Yeah,
safe.
still really solid. Yeah.
It's similar with Ideneth, where there's a lot of other armies that are going more MSU because of Blizzard and other things, or they just want more heroes, like in your list. And so you do see, like, even the armies that want to go early tend to be 2-drops as well.
Yeah, and you could easily, and I did play with this when I did my. I had a slightly modified list that I took 3-0 at an RTT like a couple weeks before, just to get a little testing in. I went all the toys, so I had kind of a really similar loadout, but only like 1 unit of Beast Flayers and some horrors in there instead. But I went Wizard Finder, Acolytes, and an extra spell on everything. So you can do it with all the toys, and actually giving your big blocks a 5-up spell ignore too is just like potentially really gross. Who cares about the attacks? It's the spell ignore now is why I would do it. But again, I emphasize that this army absolutely does not want to get doubled unless you are ready for it. So being able to control the turn order is really, really big. And so many of our missions reward you for going second, so I'm fine with, like, okay, yeah, you just take first and I'll do the thing and I'll pick the point, or I'll move the thing, or I'll remove the whatever. Like there's a lot of
Mhm.
perks already for.
Yep, and that's going to
Yep.
continue. I did going back to the third edition reveal. They are keeping the double turn, and they're going to have more consequences for taking a double. So you could see more benefits for going second. You could
Hmm.
see yeah, it'll be a really interesting going forward. But again, like same thing. I don't know how they're going to handle drops or how they're going to handle the turn order, but
Right.
yeah,
Do
it's
you
pretty
want me
big.
to give like a brief round 1 through 5 synopsis?
Yeah, why
Yeah,
don't we do a
absolutely.
quick overview? This is my picture
Okay.
of the event. Some people out there.
So I will say that, like, in preparation for the event, I look at the pack, I figure out a deployment. My army really likes to deploy in a big castle, which a very tight castle rather, a wholly within 12 of my terrain feature. Um, so I could practice deployment at home. I can't really like practice a game by myself, but I can practice the things that I can control, and that's one of them. Knowing my turn sequence, knowing how far I need my guys to move on the first turn to get objectives, and where to put my guys so that I can get my surround and destroy, like auto turn one
Hmm.
tactic with my knights. Right,
Hmm.
all of that stuff I think is really important. And to mention that for going into this, it can appear that there's not a lot of prep that might go into it, but I actually do like a healthy bit of studying and preparation for an event like this, especially if I'm vying for that 5
Yeah,
because I want as much of it to feel muscle memory to me, especially in the beginning of parts of the game,
yeah,
so that I don't have to like go through so many permutations when my opponent does something out of it. So I want to have a structure to my approach, and I want it to be thought out and practiced so that I can unpack this army, so to speak, and do my thing, and then present challenges that I need you to deal with because I'm doing mine. So
yeah.
that's kind of how I approach
Yeah.
this.
Mm-hmm.
Mission one was Geomantic Pulse, and it was the one I was worried about the most because I'm almost always going to take Defenders of the Realm, which is if I'm contesting an objective that I control, my Flesh Eater Courts guys get +1 to their save. So like a free Mystic Shield on the whole army if I'm standing on a point that I own. Morgaunt subfaction, if my heroes are contesting a point at the end of both sides of the turn, they get a noble deed point. So I want to be touching circles, right? Um, Geomantic Pulse is the one mission of the event where I could not touch a circle on deployment. And I want to give
Yep.
away the first turn. So I'm most vulnerable on that mission, giving away the first turn. And so I really need a little bit of luck into that. So that was kind of and I happened to get paired into a Gristlegore mirror match.
Hmm.
So my opponent had like the Terrorgeist hero, the zombie dragon hero, a regular Terrorgeist, a regular zombie dragon, and then a little bit of the gang,
Was that
some heroes.
Alex?
That was
Dragon?
Alex. Yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. Um, and so I don't think I could have asked for a really better matchup of the event for turn one because I knew he wasn't going to quite be able to full commit in me, and I knew that would be a bad idea even if he wanted to get all that stuff off and have one of them like yeet across the board. So I
Hmm.
wasn't fearful of that, and I knew that he wasn't going to take points from me once I touched on him because I have just way more body. But
Hmm.
also the Royal Beast Flayers, 2 units of 20. I just put them in such a way that no matter where you come, you're -1 damage and no monster actions, and that
Yeah.
kills like so much of what he's trying to do. So
Yeah.
that
Oh
game
yeah.
actually went pretty quick. I gave him top of one. He moved in a little bit. I moved up, touched all the points, took everything, and was just exactly where I wanted to be. I controlled where the pulse was because I was going second. We did prio, and he won and took the turn. Went in and
Hmm.
literally bounced off my front line, and I killed 2 dragons. So, but by the top of the end of his second turn on top, he had lost 2 of the dragons already. So he said we should
Yep.
probably call it here,
Yeah.
and we kind of just chatted it out from that point. So that was
Yeah,
pretty.
monsters hate weight of dice, especially flesh eater quartz monsters. They are not the most resilient things in the world.
Yep.
16 wounds goes away really, really fast on 60 plus attacks. Like if
Yeah.
he's running into one of those blobs, especially if he's -1 to damage and you're a little bit more resilient with a 5-up ward and a +1 to save on an objective. I can imagine once you moved on the objectives with Defenders of the Realm, there's a reason why they bounce. They don't have enough attacks to lift a unit of that size, especially with damage reduction
Yep.
and no monstrous actions. So you're still getting commands. That's great, man. I'm
Yeah.
I'm glad that went well for you.
Yeah. I actually really kind of needed I don't want to say give me because Alex is a great player and it was not a free match by any means, but I really wanted an easier matchup in that first round and I was kind of blessed with that. So that was super helpful. Round two, I played into Matthias on Skaven.
Oh
Matthias is
yeah,
really, really great player. I never want to play those games
yeah.
that
He was my
early.
round one, so yeah.
Yeah, really
Is
strong.
he a Canadian player?
Correct. Yep,
Yes.
he
I think
is.
I've seen him. I think he was at Tacoma Open and did quite well. I think he was best general, not last year, but the year before.
Yeah, with Korn or with Nurgle rather. Sorry.
Yes, that's right.
And
He was
then
running
he
Locked and
just
List.
won
Yep.
his little golden ticket again with Korn. That's what I
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
so
How
yeah,
cool.
he's a chaos guy, but he's been a long time Skaven player. He's very good. I've played him quite a few times now, and we usually kind of go a little back and forth in our games. So tough matchup for round two for sure. I'm quite familiar with Skaven, so I know all of his little tricks that he's trying to do. Um, we have a pretty good clean game of back and forth. He's kind of terrified of getting he's got two big rats, the two vermin lords, and he's kind of really nervous about bringing them in because they're just going to get monstered down by um
Beast
the
Flayer.
Royal Beast Flayers,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. So he's playing a little bit of touch and go with some cannons. He likes to garrison these three cannons so
Yeah,
that they
I remember
extend their
that.
range really far and just blast the crap out of you.
Yeah.
So that was a little annoying. In a game like this and in round four, I played Skaven again. Both times I did a tactic where I tried to make the Morbeg Knights juicy because what I wanted them to do was die early, to spend deeds early, to bring him to the backfield. Because Skaven doesn't actually have the juice to stay forward and protect the backfield as much. And once I can
Right.
get into those
Yep.
heroes, I'm in a good spot. I really start to. So he left me room in the back to get these guys in. I think that when we played, a few unfortunate things happened for him, like uh, one of his doom wheels, or sorry, one of his cannons rather blew itself up. He did like a tactic that he needed to get dreaded skitter leap off and rolled double ones on the
Mm.
hero, which was like in the back
Hmm.
corner of the map,
Mm.
just out of range. So the deceiver was like
So
another
one out of
turn.
36, right?
Yeah,
This
Yeah.
guy is
yeah.
going to miss
So
miss his tactic. Yeah.
yeah, so I think we ended up playing until like rounds 3 or 4, and then it was pretty obvious that the insurmountable gap at that point. So we kind of talked out what the points were going to look like. He did get the dreaded 13 to deny my grand game. He was like one of the few people to deny my grand strat, which is kill my general. Because he did get the guy finally all the way around. He snuck the screech all the way around to blast the general kind of at the
Mhm.
end. That's a little annoying, but yes, Skaven's got a lot of juice. So,
Yeah.
but of course they've got that chaotic factor, and the double ones on the cast just really kind of add insult to injury for Skaven
Yeah.
antics.
It's
But
yeah, kind of funny. I went against him the game before, and like for the cannons, like he kept rolling ones on the warfire cannons, which is like automatic 6 to 12 mortal wounds at
yeah,
me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, if I somehow pulled that game off, I would have probably gone against you round two, and yeah, probably just died. Yeah, the sharks are
um,
nice for going after heroes, but I don't think they can handle the hordes.
yeah, and I usually try to keep them so that they're not. And now that we don't have that sharpshooters, I try to keep them covered enough that you've got
Yeah,
to come pretty close to
yeah,
actually make it
yeah.
happen. But yeah, then round three I played against Night Haunt, um, and
Is
this one
this
was going to be this
Joseph
was
Sai?
Joseph Sai. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
This one was going to be a uphill battle for that army just because they don't recur like I do. They don't have the bodies like I do. They don't have the volume of attacks
Yep.
like I do, and I don't care. I'm not a rend army. I'm weight of dice
Mm-hmm.
against you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it was going to be an uphill battle, and I forget the mission. Maybe it's called Power Flux, but you don't count on objectives if you retreat, and that's Night
Oh,
Haunt's like whole
every step
shtick.
is
Oh, every
forward.
step
Yeah.
is forward.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
really a tough
Yep.
mission, an unfortunate one for Night Haunt. But I mean, we knew the mission's going in, so they knew he knew he was going to play that on the third. So, but yeah, that on top of just my overwhelming presence on a 4 objective mission like that, my home objectives were never threatened, and I just kept pressuring onto his castle, and so it went pretty quickly. There was
Mm.
some unfortunate dice rolls. But yeah, Curse was like most successful in that game. It was I took out like a big unit of Hex Race with just the Beast Flayers, like little guys, and then I put all the better attacks into one of the heroes to try to keep whittling down the Spirit Hosts and stuff. So a lot of fun into that one. But yeah, really tough matchup for I actually I would say after day one I was 3-0, but like a lot of luck for me, to be totally fair. And like a 5-0 takes a heavy amount of luck.
Yeah.
So
for anybody.
I'm totally fine to talk about it, right? But I needed to have an early game or an easier game one, and it was like the most monsters any list had at that event, and I'm heavy anti-monster. So big win for me. Round 2 against Matthias, really tough matchup, but a couple of timely, unfortunate rolls for him really helped me capitalize because he did double me, and I really don't want that to happen. And then round 3 into Night Haunt, not a terribly tough army for mine to deal with, but also on a mission that really doesn't favor him, and I'm charged. So,
right.
So
I mean, Night Haunt can't capitalize on the retreat and charge that's army wide that really keeps them from getting pinned and debuffing you when they get to strike back, especially with double turns. So not being able to do that or contest objectives when you have how many 90 foot sloggers on the board, 70 foot sloggers on the board. That seems like it was a pretty favorable matchup for you. So day one went well. What was your head? Where was your head at in day 2? Like, were you feeling pretty strong when you saw pairings for game 4?
Yeah, so the way that Beasley was doing pairings for that, and then we knew about this, so it wasn't a surprise or anything, but it is a little bit unique. He was doing a top 8 bracket for pairings, but not necessarily for scoring. So it was a little funky, but basically like first seed, I guess, going into day 2 was going to play whoever was coming in at 8th seed. So a true Swiss breakdown. So I actually kind of knew who my opponent was going to be in round 4. And then I knew the players that I would potentially play in round. So we did know all of that the night before. I'm pretty even keel with stuff like that, so it was fine. I knew I was playing Skaven at round 1 the next day. Of course, I played Skaven before. I've fielded Skaven plenty of times myself, so I'm pretty confident into the match. This Skaven list, Cameron Chen, very different, but yeah, I'm in a pretty good headspace. It was funny, I had just watched the coach episode with Jeremy Lefevre. The guy who won LVO, yeah. So I just watched his episode, and he was talking with Coach about not getting fatigued and some rituals that he does when he's 3-0, and so it was kind of funny because I was like, you know what? It's only crazy if it doesn't work, right? So he said to eat more than you might. He said you might be full, but eat extra food because your body really needs it, and your brain is like working overtime, and it's like running a marathon. It's kind of how he might have even said that. He's like, go get yourself a steak dinner, take ibuprofen after the first round, eat the extra food. So I did all of those things. I did every single suggestion. I went and found a steak restaurant and got a steak dinner by myself. It was nice, to just get away. Went and did that. Like, I copied the whole ritual, and then it worked. So it can't be that crazy.
You also had the advantage of not sleeping in the living room in the Airbnb where I was and got like 4 hours of sleep. So
and I don't live super far away. The venue is like 40 minutes from my place, but I was actually staying at a friend's condo because they were down staying at my place with my wife or her friend. So I was like 12 minutes up the road.
Oh, nice.
The daylight saving switch was annoying and probably hurt sleep as well. But I was in a pretty good headspace. I went home and to Washington after all, so I smoked a couple joints, and I was smoking joints the whole day. I always, but trying to get anyone to come with me, but that's how I play. It's just who I am. But I was in a good space. I ordered I went and got the steak and picked up some snacks on the way home, and I had an easy, chill night. Pretty good headspace. I did talk with a buddy of mine that plays Skaven a little bit, just because he's one of my really good friends. So we were chatting. I just kind of said, "What are you thinking about this list?" Well, Cameron's list, he had like 2 Doom Wheels, 2 cannons, the Slink Skittershank, and the little Warband that have like 6-inch deep strike. He's got a Hell Pit. Just like a menagerie of different stuff, and you gotta love it, right? And he's doing 3 claw steps ahead, so he's trying to do stuff where he's like yeeting these doom wheels across the board and then using 3 claw steps ahead to have them pile in and deal mortal wounds, and then they activate and they pile in over your models again and do. So he's really trying to be cheeky because, excuse me, the doom wheels are doing that. The cannons are shooting you for mortal wounds. Slink and the pack say 6s to hit or D3 mortal. The monster says like a 6 to hit is like 6 mortal wounds or something. Like the big Helpit Abomination has like a mortal clearing spell or something. So he's just trying to go like full send on these mortal wounds, which is an awesome strategy for the meta. Honestly, it's like a really neat approach. And I think Cameron ended up like 4-1 or 3-2. He was doing really well. Yeah. Obviously 3-0 going into day 2. Against my army though, that scalpel damage does nothing, you know, because unfortunately I've got all the tools to keep you away from the heroes. You don't really have to like cheat in if I'm playing tight enough, and you deal that small amount of damage and it's easily revived. Even if I'm not getting my spells off, I'm generating deeds and those arc regents are there, so normally I'm just gonna pick up everything that you do. To keep it short, he had a pretty unfortunate. I gave him top of 1. He did some stuff. He sent some things into me. One of his cannons blew up on the shot on top of 1. He like rolled a 6 for damage and then rolled like 6 1s with the roll, and he overcharged it. So like it blew up. He sent in a Death Frenzy Doom Wheel into my Royal Beast Flayers and killed like maybe 2 models. They fought back and killed that. And then on the other side, he sent in Slink and like the Warp Fire Thrower and 20 Clan Rats. And I basically lifted those with the other. So by the end of his first turn, I had killed like 600 or 700 points that he just threw at me, you know? And from that point on, I knew I was in a real spot because they're not bringing that stuff back, you know? So I have to play just really safe and just stick to the basics, right? Score points, do my tactics. Don't be cheeky. Don't make charges. Stand where I need to stand. Score my points. I'm already ahead, you know? So that game I kind of just precisioned in that regard, and it took some time because we're both playing some tricky techie armies, but we got to like round 4, not too much time left, and we're able to talk out where we're at that point.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
again, some luck for me, you know, it's really. Yeah. I wasn't rolling even super hot on the weekend. Some weekends I roll pretty hot, but this weekend wasn't insane by any means. But yeah, my opponents had kind of let me do that. And round 5, I kind of alluded to that a little earlier, against Croak and the gang. One of my club mates, probably somebody I have the most games played against. You know, that was Matt Kangizer.
Matt Kangizer. Okay.
Yeah, Kangi is what I call him. So yeah, me and Kangi have played lots of games over the time. We're both part of the same club, Victoria's Secret, and we live really close to each other. So it was one that I was nervous about, no doubt. You know, I always have this approach where, you know, I'm never like afraid necessarily of a game or overly stressed or nervous. There's no like star-studded or, you know, names of who you are and what you're doing to, you know, it's fine. I know Sigmar, we're just playing the same game. Right. So like I'm cool with all of that.
That's a great headspace to be in.
Yep. I know it's a tough army, and I know that to approach it differently and be extra safe and kind of like I just said for the 4th round, like not take unnecessary risks. And so that's what I did. I played really calm and calculated. He didn't have great casting phases. Like on one of the, I forget if it was turn 1 or 2, but with all 3 Slann casts, he rolled a 1 and a 2. Like he rolled 3, 3, 3. It was crazy.
Oh my
then
gosh.
On the first turn, Croak miscast on its 3rd spell, and I denied actually stopped the 2nd block. So, you know, he wasn't having an abysmal casting phase, but it was definitely not. I mean, of course, there's so many other spells and stuff that are still definitely taking heavy fire from above. But the big one is Comet's Call, because Comet's Call doesn't need line of sight, and you're hitting my guys. So there's nothing I can do to protect from this. And so like my Marrow Scroll Herald becomes really dangerous, keeping my heroes tight. I was like measuring specifically so that he couldn't teleport Croak and be wholly within 12 of the Astrolith Bear and within 18 inches of my guys, because that will be able to see through Lookout Sir and blast them. So I was really calculated and measured, like purposefully not having heroes on objectives and literally like touching the backboard because I needed them protected. And then, like I said, you full send into that. So I did that. I went up. was not able to get a double turn, but like I said, the second casting phase was successful for me. A couple of odd things happened, a little uncharacteristic for Kengi, but in the first turn he did surround and destroy and moved his guys into the position, but then we didn't necessarily catch this, but he had moved his whole wizard castle up with his guard and everything, and one of those guys needed to hang back. And he had moved all of this stuff up, and we had like got to the end, and he was like, crap, I needed this guy back here, so I didn't get that tactic. So that was unfortunate, right? Because that's probably one that should have been caught, but he was utilizing the perks of not having him move, so it's a tough one to go back, you know.
Right.
Into the next round, 2 or 3, he picked the actually it was round 3, because the round 2 he said I need to kill a unit with a spell, and of course he blasted off a unit with a spell. Round 3 he needed to do the other one, like I forget which order, but Seraphon has one, and then we have one in the HP, right? So he picked the second version of it, and then called down the big mortal wound thing, like within the, like, spent the 15 points to blast everyone within the radius of a dude for d6 damage, and did 6 damage to my unit of 2 Morbeg Knights in the back that he was trying to kill with a spell. And I got to do a little dirty trick where I denied my own wards. I chose not to roll wards because they're inherently optional. So I let my unit die to his blast to deny that battle tactic.
So that's a universal, that wards are optional?
Yeah, and we called Beasley over and chatted with him because I was pretty sure that was the case, and he said, "Yep,
wow,
inherently optional wards are."
That's a good piece of meat there.
Yeah, so I chose, and it was not the first time that game that I utilized that trick, because there was another opportunity where he needed to retreat to and charge to, and so he did some damage with spells, and I chose to not take wards and pull out of combat with one of the guys that needed to retreat. So, yeah, knowing the rules and how to manipulate that, like normally you're like, you would always, but in this case, I actually wanted those to die to something else. So it's unfortunate because it's my buddy and it's a little cheeky, but I'm like, I have to not roll the wards. We just checked with the guy, and I was pretty sure that I would do it. But there was no feel bad or bad blood or anything. But it is something that can kind of catch people off guard because they're like, "Oh, I hope you roll at least a 6," and I was like, "Oh no, I'm not doing it." So yeah, again, a bit of luck there, but also like I have a really strong mastery of that army because it is so powerful. I've spent a lot of studying what that army's trying to do, so I knew really what I needed to do into him, and I don't think Kengi had the best understanding of the best ways to deal with me. But he held his own. It wasn't like a complete blowout or anything. I think it was like 26-16 or 24-16 when the dust settled, because he in the end did deny my grand strat, but I also his, and so yeah, it was a decent victory, but not a gimme by any means, and that was with some favorable things happening for me.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Wow. And then you ended it as a quick shout out, this is not your army here. I took this picture at Sparkle Party. This is Michael Dorland in Portland. I just thought this was very cinematic, and it represented what was going through your opponent's heads and their models' heads. Yeah, you ended up with Best General there with a pretty smashing trophy from the Dimensional Cascade team there. That's a battle mat, right?
Look at Ricky just hanging out, helping you hold up the battle mat. How did he do in the tournament?
He did not play. He and Beasley.
Oh, he was the coordinator. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this was funny because I'm not a very tall guy, and so I was like the last one they called up, and like my side is hung down because I'm like, I'm not very tall. Gotta stand this up a little bit. But yeah, this is a really cool. This is a mat that for people who don't know, these award game mats. And so you can play a game of Age of Sigmar on it, and he actually, and again, it's kind of hard to see, but he actually has lines and dotted like perforation almost, where all the objectives are, all the measurements are 9 inches back, 11 back, within 6 of the board edge. Like anything you would ever need to measure for exists on that board, but not so much that it obscures the game at all. It's perfect when you need it, and then your eyes just completely glaze over it when it's not necessary. It's kind of brilliant, and he's made them for a couple years now, and he always does them, updates them for the GHB, and he normally kind of sells some of the generic ones locally, but these are all one of a kind for best general, best paint, best overall, best sport. Everyone gets their own, and they're
That's a
circled.
fantastic. Trophy to take home with you. Really, really cool. When we get done with this stream, I'd love for you to DM me the name of that company and where we can find those battle mats. I'd like to share that with our viewers on YouTube.
Okay, yeah.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
But
really, really sweet.
It was a fun event. I had actually won this Sparkle Party like 3 times ago. I think it was 7 and 10. So I have another one of these white mats here that's fun in the purple sun, and it's got like a big Saurus rider on it with a purple sun in the background. So it's pretty cool. It was nice to like win another Sparkle Party with a completely different army. I was using Beast of Chaos the time before, so.
Right on. Well, Mason, I really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through how the tournament went. You had some really interesting insights into how you went about your list building, how you kind of executed your gameplay in each game. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And just generally, really cool dude, and really nice to finally get to talk to you in person and just kind of see how your mind works when it comes down to competitive play. And I'm excited to see you at the Blue Sky GT too. There's going to be 9 people, 8 rage babies there, so we're going to represent like 25% of the
Awesome.
of the tournament there, our team.
I hope I play everyone.
Yeah, I hope so too. We always have a blast. We have some competitive players and we have some not so competitive players that are just there to have a great time. So we've got a great mix, and we love to meet people and just have a good time. So it's going to be really, really fun.
Yeah, I'm stoked to see you guys too.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'll be parsing through this later, getting all little nuggets out of it. The prep is really big for tournaments. Getting your battle tech, knowing your game plan going in is a big part of that.
Yep. I call it a roadmap, and I could talk about it even further for an hour.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm a heavy proponent of road mapping your tournament, especially if you know the objectives. You should absolutely be building an army with battle tactics, with your missions in mind.
Yeah.
And I'll pause and just say, if your goal is I'm going to this tournament to win, right? And I'm not saying that I don't go to have fun. I love it. The list I sent you, I think all of my guys are named. I'm super into the flavor as well, but I play competitive and I play to win, right? So just like you would work out and practice for something, I don't get the most reps, unfortunately. Like I did a little RT 3 games prior to this, but I've only played 3 games with Feck before this day. But I've listened to every single video you can think about Feck. I've talked to as many smart people that play the game. I've watched people play TTS games because I don't really play, but I like to jump in people's games and watch, so I absorb as much information as I can. I've made sure over the course of the edition to have a mastery of what the other armies are, and invaluable when playing a brand new army and taking it, because I'm capitalizing that you don't necessarily know everything that I can do, but I've got a great understanding of everything that you do. So I'm happy to talk strategy ever, if you can get a hold of me at whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I will. We'll talk about
We would
cities.
love to have you. Yeah, we would love to have you back on stream if we meet at a tournament, if things go well for any one of us in our gaming group, or if you're putting on a tournament or friends with some of the coordinators. It's always a good time to get together and talk. And I think we have a very strong AOS community out here in the Northwest, just full of really good people. I've never had a bad game with any of the competitive players in this area. It's just a whole lot of fun. Absolutely love it. So hopefully we can get you out here again to talk on chat sometimes. You're always welcome to come out to the studio and play a battle report if you would like as well. We love to put together games here and share those with everybody as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It was tons of fun. I love doing stuff like this. So you just let me know anytime you need a pitch hitter. I'll come in for you.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right, Andrew, you got anything else, my friend?
No. We did have a question in the chat we can go over really quick before we close out. But a guy was asking if you scope out the enemy lists or if you mostly focus on what you're trying to do with your army. And I believe it sounds like with your roadmap, you want to make sure you can max out your score without an opponent first, right? And
Correct. Yeah. Within reason, I want to practice and focus the elements that I have the most. So with that being said, when lists go public, you're damn sure I check every single list,
Yeah.
right? I know what lists I would rather face and which ones I would rather not face.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I know that before I even see the list, because if I'm playing Corn or if I'm playing Seraphon and there's 8 OBR, the 2+ spell ignore that used to exist, like, whew, I don't want to
Yep.
face that, right?
Yeah.
So understanding your good and your bad matches is kind of a better way to think about that. And so what you can do and should do is realize that your army can't exceed at an A+ level 100% efficiency all the time. So evaluating the things that you really excel at and putting enough weight there that you can continue to do that, and then hedging your bets on the other one and just recognizing that I'm going to have weaker matchups, so I need to play into the struggle matchups. That's something to keep in mind as well. But I don't necessarily focus on any one thing that they're going to do, because ultimately I want to execute the thing that I've already kind of mapped out with a little bit of variation, and make my opponent have to overthink their options while I stay on this path that I've created. And then the last thing I'll say is, when your opponent does something unusual you don't expect, two things happen. You've planned for a better play and they've made a worse one, and so that's fine, right? Capitalize. Or they do something that you did not see coming and it puts you in a weird position. Having that path and that roadmap is really nice, because once you answer that problem, you have something to get back on track. So revisiting or re-coming back to that track that you've created, that's going to be really helpful, because you have to think about so much. So limit the things that you can actually like really make mistakes on by guiding yourself in the forefront.
Yeah, that was an awesome tidbit. I'm glad I got that last little question in. I think for me, that's about it. I'll do 2 quick shout outs. One, if you want to learn more about Feck Barkdoor, Jeremy Vassier's channel is excellent for that kind of stuff. The Battle Shock channel is also excellent if you want to see Feck in action. The upcoming Cities versus Feck that David teased earlier. And a quick shout out, we're going to do a tournament in Portland on June 22nd. The first GT we're hosting in Portland in a while. Rose City Rampage, Get Rex GT. So if you want to look that up on BCP, you can go ahead and do that. With that, I think I'm going to close out the stream. Thank you so much, Mason, for being here and for hosting, David. I'll close this out, and you'll see us on YouTube.
All right, everybody. Goodbye.
Later.